Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships of Bermudan and British Registry.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews. The best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drink, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And now, beverages that help us get through the staff meetings. What? I shouldn't have said that? Crown Royal, High Noon, Jack Daniels. I shouldn't have mentioned that.
I'm in.
It's the incentive to go. It's certainly not for the info. And the pickle bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Okay. So, look, Pat Kraft met with the media today. I love what he said about Cale Sanderson. It's what all of us who have been around Cale know. Like, for example, he was saying, look, wrestling is allowed to go from 9.9 to 30 scholarships. They're not going to have 30 scholarships. Okay? There's not. But, okay? They're working through the number now, but Cale's going to have more scholarships. He's going to have the money he needs. They're going to be part of the revenue share. Okay? You know, football, men's and women's basketball, wrestling, women's soccer, women's volleyball, you know, appear to be the ones that will be a part of the revenue share. And Cale is not somebody who goes and asks for things. This is a no-ego. I've said it 1,000 times on the show. I love talking to him. And he and I usually, we have a good time talking. But, you know, I remember he spoke to the football team. Oh, it was mid-season, somewhere there. He gave a great speech. At least I thought it was a great speech. And he's walking off. He goes, Steve, you know, he says, that's not really my. I said, you were great. I said, what are you talking about? I said, if everybody is like focused on what you're saying, I said, that means they're listening. I said, it's a great speech. I said, don't think about that stuff. I said, the one thing about you, I said, I'll be honest with you. I said, sometimes you don't realize who you are. And he laughed. He goes, all right. You know, and when you're dealing with the best, and Penn State Wrestling is the best, and you're dealing with a coach who is the best, which Cale is, and he understands what he has to work with and what he needs, and he tells you, and it's not, I don't need 50 scholarships, I don't need 30. He said, but I'm going to need X amount. Well, he's going to get X amount. But he's not out there saying, hey, look, I need all 30 or I got to do this or whatever. No, he understands exactly because he's all about winning the right way. He's all about, okay, whatever the result is we get, but we demand excellence. And if you go out there and put forward excellence, you have a better shot at winning. If you put forward excellence and you don't quite get there, we'll work on what you need to maybe get that added step. That's how they operate. Now, if any of you have been around him at all, you know what I'm talking about. He's just the best. And Casey and Cody have been there the entire time. They're just, like Pat said today, you'll never see anything like this again in any sport. Never see this. Now, especially with the portal these days. You're not going to see anything like this in any sport. I mean, they're all doing cartwheels at UConn. They won back-to-back men's national championships, and they should. What UConn men's basketball did was extremely difficult. Imagine doing this.
And Cale never went up to an official and told him he was the best coach in wrestling history.
Doesn't need to. Has no need. The official already assumes that. Right? Like he said about Cale, he said he just asked for what he knows he needs to win. And that's it. Backed Mike Rhodes today. He gets it. And it goes back to what Matt Panner was talking about. I may get into that a little bit more maybe tomorrow because I know we got Rob King on today. Because I'm big on Mike Rhodes. I really am. And now part of that is I'm around it all the time. I see what he's trying to do, how he's trying to accomplish it. We've also, look, Mike and I have a lot of talks, so I know what he gives me a pretty good idea of what he's thinking about, just like not just in the moment, but what he's thinking about moving forward. Right? And I know you want me to tell all of you what he's thinking moving forward. That's up to Mike to do that. You know, when you have private conversations, to me, private conversations are private. Had a lot to say about Katie and what she's doing. It was remarkable to go through everything she went through, win a national championship. Pat also talked about roster retention, and he's right about that. Roster retention is critical. We've talked about roster retention, 1,000 times? Now, on the football general manager part of it, okay, and then I'll get to Beaver Stadium. Look, the person that they need, and they're doing it some internally right now, Andy Frank essentially is the general manager and has been for years. James has had a general manager that's out there looking at the recruiting, out there looking at the portal. In the end, James and the staff, they make the decision on personnel. But these guys are going through all the hard work to identify the type of player, the position, and so forth that Penn State needs to be looking at, and that pool of players that they need to be looking at. And that staff has done a great job, whether it's Andy Frank or Alan Zamitis or Kenny Sanders. I can go through the long list of people who have been doing it. All right? They've done a phenomenal job. But in the end, James is the one, along with the coaching staff, says, you know what, that we're offering this guy. Not every place is like that. Sometimes the general manager is the one that's in charge of acquiring the college talent, right? The way it is. That's not here. What you need here is what I refer to as a capologist. Somebody that says, okay, X amount is going to football. Out of that X amount, how do we now work that X amount on our roster? And how much goes to whom? That's the person, that's where that person comes in. And then you have to have the same thing for men's basketball, then women's basketball, wrestling, and others that may be in this revenue share. That's what you need here, is somebody that has the ability to say, okay, we have X amount left to spend internally, along with any external NIL money. Okay? That's what that person needs to do in working with Andy. Beaver Stadium. So we all know there's going to be temporary seating on the west side. And so far, the progress they've made has been good. He thinks they're going to have close to the same capacity they had last season. Right? And that's the hope, okay? That they can have close to that capacity with the temporary seating. But they're still going to be doing construction work as the season goes. And part of the construction work, by the way, includes expanding the East Concourse. Now, that East Concourse desperately needs to be expanded because it's not just the ability of you to move into the stadium and so forth. You know, they openly discuss, hey, look, what something happens, we got to get people out. Can we do that with what we have? So they're thinking about you when they do this stuff, right? And so that concourse getting wider on the east side is also going to be part of this construction. You know, even though the west is going to get all the attention, how they do the spring game, they're not sure yet. In terms of, like, you know, in terms of the seating and so forth. And that's one thing. I pretty much know where we're broadcasting from in the fall. Don't ask me about the spring. I have no idea where they're putting us. that part, I don't know. Okay. I'll find out at some point. Not that concerned, just as long as there's a spot somewhere.
Maybe Matt will let you guys use the Service Electric 8 van and you can sit on top of that.
No, I'll do it off of TV. No. So I don't know if they'll put us on the east side in a box. I don't know. But supposedly we're getting a temporary box on the west side as part of this temporary seating, like they've done at Northwestern, like they do with the Waste Management Open. Have you ever? You probably haven't seen that in person. It's kind of remarkable when you see it, because a few years ago, the Fiesta Bowl I did with Washington, Jack and I went out to dinner at TPC Scottsdale, and they had it all set up, and you're like going, holy mackerel. It was something else. All right? So there's going to be stuff like that, but that's where it is. And look, the key is to have everything in place on the temporary stuff by Nevada. So when they get here, great. And with the idea this whole thing should be done by the summer of 27. Now, it sounds like it's a long way off, but that's 2 years. I mean, sometimes you have to put it into perspective. It's already almost the spring of 25. They just knocked down the press box and took the top half of the stands off on the west side. So it's all part of the process, but they'll be doing all of this, and it's still going to be a construction zone while the season's going on, and into the winter, of course. But, I mean, I go by it all the time. Now, as for the future of the spring game, he didn't want to get into that because nobody knows. I mean, Penn State's doing something for the spring this year. But you already have Nebraska, Texas, USC saying that they're not going to do a spring game. I think what you're going to do is you're going to have to meet with others, and in meeting with others, come up with an idea as to how you want to handle. Pat's exactly right. What he talked about at the beginning was the calendar's a mess. And how many times have you heard me say the calendar's a mess? Right? I mean, it's a mess. And I've said that over and over again. And he said, like one thing with, I mean, even like, for example, signing day. I mean, maybe they disagree with me of this. Maybe Pat would disagree, or maybe James would disagree. I think the signing date ought to be the first, the early signing date, like the first Wednesday in August. I mean, these players don't leave. Very rare do you have somebody decommit now during the. I mean, how many decommitments has Penn State had during the season? Normally, the guys that say they're coming here end up signing. Let them do it in August. And if there's somebody who's not sure, they can wait until the first Wednesday of February. It's fine. Right? That's part of it. What you do with the portal, they're going to have to null that out because the current system with the portal and the timing of it doesn't work. Right? Now what do you do with the overall schedule? He talked about week 0 today. Well, I've talked about week 0. I think you're going to have to go back to week 0 to start. And I realize that there are contracts for conference championship games. And this did not come up today. But the idea of, okay, say you're the ACC, and say they go to 14, and the ACC gets 2 automatic qualifiers. Well, Jim Phillips floated the idea, instead of 1 playing 2, why don't you have 2 play 3 for the second bid? Okay. Now, that did not come up today. I'm actually would be in favor of bagging championship games and going right into the 16 and starting that weekend. That's me.
If you give them that week 0, you might even be able to squeeze in a week off at the end of the season before you do start the playoffs.
Well, I think the standard should now be that last year, because of the calendar, it was 2 bye weeks. Well, it's going to be 2 bye weeks again this year. I think that needs to be the standard from now on.
Yeah.
With the length of season, I think you need to have 2 bye weeks all the time in the schedule. And I think that part, because you have to think about the wear and tear on everybody involved in it. But he's right. The calendar itself needs to be changed, which now let's get back to the original point of the calendar in the spring. Penn State's going to start its winter workout schedule tomorrow. In terms of the 6 they're going to have, where they're going to go at 6 a.m. and so forth, because they've been going through winter workouts, but these are now the formal ones inside Haluba Hall. And the first one's tomorrow morning. The next one's going to be Thursday. Penn State's starting it later because Penn State's season ended later. With Easter the way it is, your options were to play the blue-white game on April 12th or play it on April 26th. They chose the later one, the 26th. It is good for the town. It's good for the hotels. It's great for the restaurants. And, to be honest with you, it's a fun, relaxing day in the stadium. From a football point of view, calendar-wise, they have to now discuss whether they want to continue with these spring practices the way they do it or go to more of an off-season OTA schedule. That's what they need to discuss, which would exclude a blue-white game, but may include like a fan festival or something like that. I don't know. I'm just throwing out stuff. But that's, I think, what Nebraska did was like, whoa, because they get 60,000 people for that. Well, they may get 60,000 people for it, but, I mean, the portal can't be the only reason. Because if I had to pick a year where I'd like to at least get some guys out there to show off what they could do, it would be people aren't going to like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay. I mean, I would like to see it for the guys with the roster being cut down to 105 that might not make the 105-man cut but can transfer someplace else. And they were able to show what they could do. So, yeah.
And as we've, the last couple of years, more and more, it's been a showcase for that part of the roster anyway.
Yeah, it has more and more, no question. But I mean, this would be like, for example, this is a good game, for example, for Ethan Grunkemeyer. It's a good opportunity for Jackson Smolik because, Grunkemeyer only got into the SMU game last year. Smolik, of course, was hurt. So, I mean, this blue-white game, I think, was going to be great for the two of them to kind of show what they can do as, the second and third quarterbacks on the roster, whatever order you want to put him. So, we'll see what happens with all of that. But this year there will be a blue-white game in some form. Now, what that form takes on, that's up to James to explain to us what that form happens to be. But there'll be some form of something out there. And as for the basketball part, look, Pat, look, everybody, and I'm somebody that really believed that this was an NCAA tournament team. Okay? Last year I told you I didn't know what they had. They went through the preseason. I told you I really don't know. During the season last year I kept telling you I really don't know. Because I really didn't know. What do you want me to do, lie to you? Well, this time when I looked at the team, I thought, they got real NCAA possibilities. I liked how it was coming together, how it was fitting, but my one worry was, geez, what if somebody gets hurt? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Will somebody get hurt? Like, great. Now they're playing a little bit better right now. They've won the last two games. But I've talked to Mike enough, and I've listened to Mike enough. And I know what he's thinking about doing with the program and what he thinks will work, especially in the Big Ten. And Mike's a heck of a coach. He is a great teacher. If you spend 10 minutes standing next to me at a practice, you'd be like, well, this guy knows this stuff. Right? But, yeah, it was, and Pat sees the same thing because he talks to Mike enough. But I know we didn't quite get to the Twitter world. That's what I always find interesting about Twitter is that when you look at the comments on Twitter, which I'll be, to be honest with you, is rare. It's like, I don't know, say there are 1,000 comments. They're done by 30 people who are going back and forth at each other on Twitter. I'm going to determine the topics of the day on this show based on that. I mean, Todd, do we ever talk about a topic on this show that Twitter's really blowing up over this?
If I do, I don't tell you that's where it's from.
Oh, you're keeping things from me now. Oh, okay.
I might see something on there and use it to ask you a question, but I've always wondered that because, I don't understand why anybody pays attention to it in that sense, in the sense that it's just no names and no faces that can say whatever they want. I don't know why people let that bother them.
Well, that's why I talked about this in my class today.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out, it was my coffee mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai Iced Coffee Flavored Creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
Is a tradition of trust. It's more than just words. It's a promise. A promise that when you walk into Sunbury Motors Ford, you're not just another customer. You're family. It's 110 years of handshakes that mean something. Of fair deals, honest service, and putting you first. And right now, that means huge savings on the Ford you want. Pick from 35 new Ford Escapes with savings up to $7,700, starting at $24,915. Or choose from 32 new Ford Bronco Sports, discounted up to $7,000, priced as low as $28,935. Need power? We've got 51 new Ford F-150s, slashed up to $12,616, starting at $45,974. Plus, take up to $10,000 off new Ford Broncos and a massive $13,000 off new Ford Expeditions. Sunbury Motors Ford in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza and at sunburymotors.com. Sunbury Motor Company, a tradition of trust since 1915.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and Sunbury Motor Company. Now from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Let's face it, Purdy Insurance does a great job of making sure you're fully covered, but they also do a great job with their customer service of making sure they save you money. It is all at Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Joined by the outstanding Rob King. Rob, first of all, before we get into Mike Lange, congratulations to you on an outstanding opening season with the Steelers. I know it ended far sooner than you wanted it to, but you and the crew were great.
Steve, thank you very much. It was a great first year for me personally. I had so much fun doing it, and I'm on my way actually right now to the combines to see if get a look at some of these guys the Steelers might be drafting to hopefully. I think they're closer than they were a year ago, and maybe they can close the gap between themselves and the top teams with one more good offseason.
Yeah, and look, the Combine is one-stop shopping. It's a great place to go. And I don't know, when you've talked to the Steelers, Rob, have you felt like the interview process was just as important, if not even more important, than some of the on-field stuff we see?
I do think that that's the case, Steve. I think that they're looking for their type of guys. Mike Tomlin always says, I'd rather say whoa than sick 'em. I want somebody that is chomping at the bit to play hard, physical Steelers football. And they've seen all of these guys on tape. It's not like they're thumbing through the roster of players and saying, hey, who's this guy from Texas A&M? They've got a scouting report on all of these guys. So yeah, I think that part of the process. Certainly, there's some things that come with competing. Some guys want to run the fastest 40 time. They want to run the fastest 3-cone drill time and all these other things. So maybe, you're looking for little things like, hey, is a competitive fire coming out even in this setting? But I think that all leads back to your point, which is that I think that interview process is really important in the evaluation process of these players.
Yeah, the biggest problem I've had with the interview process over the years is there's a lot of really good people that want to just get good, pertinent information. But you and I, who do this for a living, Rob, you and I both know there are a few people out there that when they're asking questions, they're not good at it.
Right.
I want to ask you now about the great Mike Lange, because all that work that you did on TV all those years, and Mike was an important part of that for many, many years. What did you learn about the business being around Mike and then also just observing Mike?
Well, I think, Mike, and I've talked about this a lot with young students, and it probably wouldn't be the first thing I think of when I think of Mike Lange. I mean, I think we think of, what an outstanding broadcaster he was. But Mike showed up. Mike did the work. Mike was at every morning skate. Mike was not only at every morning skate, he was paying attention at every morning skate, preparing himself throughout the day to be ready for the broadcast. So, that level of preparation, and Steve, you know this as a great broadcaster yourself, it can't be faked. You have to put in the work. I tell that to students or young people in broadcasting, all the time. If you don't want to put in the work, you're in the wrong business. You have to put in the work. And Mike Lange, just observing him, he put in the work. And that was, that's the bedrock of being a passable announcer or a good announcer, or in the case of Mike Lange, a great top-of-the-scale announcer. You can't fake that. You have to do it, and Mike Lange definitely did it.
Yeah, because here you are, you're driving to the combine. Why? Because it's going to make you better at the job. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., Penn State's having its first winter workout, and guess who's showing up? I mean, because I know I need to be better at this job. I told my class this morning, you need talent, no question, but you need to out-hustle people. You got to hustle all the time. It's all the work people don't see.
Yeah, and I think that most of us who are in the business, and if you reach any level of success in the business, chances are you'll like that part of it. That's, we're talking about competitiveness in the 3-cone drill and running the 40s. Well, that's sort of that's what competitiveness looks like in our world, and doing that extra work and knowing that it's going to pay off and enjoying the process because the results will follow. I remember when I was a young Division III football player, a coach telling me, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And my thinking, well, that's a load of hooey. I want to get to the mountaintop. It's about the destination. Well, then you learn, sure, that the destination's the payoff. It really is. It really is true, even though it's a bit of a hackneyed phrase. It really is true that it's about the journey, and embracing that, and not only embracing it but enjoying it is part of it. And I know Mike Lange enjoyed that part of it. He enjoyed talking to the players, going into the locker room, going to the morning skates, talking to the opposing team's announcers, showing up with his charts early, really, really watching warm-ups. I mean, warm-ups were not a time when he was having a cup of coffee and sitting back. Warm-up was the final bit of preparation. One of the things that I've learned from Mike Lange, that little bit is extremely valuable time. Those players get out on the ice. Those players get out on the basketball court. Those players get out on the field. That is the finishing school of that night's broadcast. So, and Mike did all of that stuff. So, you don't get to be great by accident. He's certainly singular, but he's also great. And Steve, I've told this to people. We all remember our favorite Mike Lange catchphrases, and the way he talked about the game was different, and the way the phrases he used. But if he'd done none of that, he'd still be a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He was a great broadcaster who also brought unbelievable flair.
What I always thought, too, there's another element to it as well. He understood that there has to be a trust between the franchise and the announcer, and a trust between the broadcaster and the fans. And he had great trust with the fans because he respected them so much.
I totally agree. And I think you're right. I think the players liked and trusted Mike Lange, and the organization did. And that's a large amount of trust to carry, because you have to be able to bring the fans have to trust you, right? And you're right. The fans absolutely, unequivocally trusted Mike Lange, and I think that's a really good point, Steve. Really good point.
Yeah, and the way he treated fans with great respect. He always gave them time. Is that the Mike Lange you saw all the time that made sure that no matter how busy he was, that he wasn't too busy for somebody else?
Absolutely. Yeah. He was, yes, he never forgot that. Another thing that maybe younger fans may not realize was that, Mike Lange he was the entertainment for the Penguins when the team wasn't that entertaining. He was the guy that was the reason to tune in, and he never forgot that connection that, the fans were attracted to Mike Lange every bit as much as they were attracted to the Penguins in some of those early years because of the way he broadcast and because of that unique and singular style. And that connection that he had with the fans in the early days continued on through their greatness, and he never took it for granted. And the fans, I think, always remembered and appreciated that as well. And if you saw him out, he always had time for people. Everything about him, everything about his broadcasting lent itself to exactly what you're talking about.
There's another element, too, to this, because Mike did the games for 46 seasons. When the Dodgers moved from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, many people felt like Vin Scully really taught Southern California fans about the nuances of baseball. I felt like Mike Lange, when he took over as the play-by-play guy, really taught the Pittsburgh fans and the Western Pennsylvania fans and West Virginia, Ohio, and so forth, the nuances of hockey because he cared that much about the game and he was that relatable to the fans. Do you think that's accurate?
Yes, and I absolutely 100% correct. And I think the relatability factor that you're talking about, that was something that was, born out of his style, certainly born out of the fact that, the team wasn't very good early on. But also, when you think about, for example, like a John Madden in football, John Madden could entertain you and teach you about the game. He would say things that sounded sometimes obvious, like, if a linebacker was blitzing and a running back was trying to pick him up, he would stop it and say, well, you have a big guy here and a little guy, and usually the big guy's going to run over the little guy, And instead of saying, well, the off-the-ball linebacker here on this inside blitz on the sixth move, all this other jargon, he just simplified it for you so that you could understand it. And Mike was able to do that. The hockey fans grew with Mike Lange and with the team. But, yes, he taught them because, Pittsburgh was a minor league hockey town. It was a good minor league hockey town. The Hornets were a championship caliber team when the Penguins became an expansion team. But, you could go to any Penguins game you wanted, anytime you wanted. You just had to drive down there and buy a ticket. As opposed to this long stretch of sellouts that they had and all that stuff. So, it was important for fans to learn about the game. And now you think of Pittsburgh as a great hockey town. And part of that, obviously, probably the biggest part of that overall was Mario Lemieux. But the guy describing Mario Lemieux and the guy describing those teams before Mario and after Mario remained there, like you said, for 46 seasons, and is a big part of that hockey growth as well. And that's Mike Lange.
I don't know if you ever really had a chance to talk to Mike about this, but he was terrific on TV, awesome on radio. Did he have a preference as to the creating on radio versus the TV part? Did he have a preference?
My guess, I never did talk to him about this, but my guess is, I felt like, there was a time in which he was removed from the TV broadcast and went into radio, and I felt at that time that it was like a second wind for him in his career. Maybe that's too strong of a way to put it, but I just thought he was phenomenal on the radio, absolutely phenomenal. And he was obviously very, very good on TV too. But in radio, you're painting that picture for somebody, and he also had an uncanny sixth sense to know when something was about to happen. And I really wanted to mention this because I can't think of too many, if any, broadcasters who had a better sense of this. So imagine you're in your garage and you're doing something, you have the game on, and you're listening, but you're Right now you're looking for that one missing screw that you need to screw into the table upstairs, and your mind's kind of on that. And all of a sudden, your mind's on the radio because Mike changed his inflection. He changed his tone. Look out now, and then all of a sudden you're forgetting all about the 3/8-inch screw that may or may not be in your hand, and you're listening to Mike Lange because he just had an unbelievable ability to sense when a big moment was coming. I've never heard anything like it. And so, that comes with, and, that was more prevalent on radio. I think of that as a radio type of thing. I'm sure he enjoyed both. As you know, Steve, they're very different. It's not exactly like two different jobs, but it's two different jobs. It's two jobs, one job done in two very, very different ways. And so I think of him as a radio guy. Who is also great at TV, but maybe he would have thought the other way around. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike is awfully proud of what you've been able to accomplish. So, Rob, I'm going to let you get to the combine. Both hands on the wheel. Go over there. And like me, they're probably not going to ask you for recommendations, but that's okay.
No, they won't. That will not be even an issue. No one will even question me about that. But I'll have fun, and it's going to be a great time, and I'm looking forward to it. And thanks for as always, for having me on, Steve. Really appreciate it.
By the way, Rob, St. Elmo's or Harry and Izzy's, one of the two. Can't go wrong. Okay.
I've been to St. Elmo's, but Harry and Izzy's. Okay, I'll put that on the radar.
It's right next to St. Elmo's. It's the same ownership. Same great Penn State guy, Craig Holtz, that's running it, the whole deal. All right?
Okay, you got it, my friend. Thank you.
You bet. Have a safe trip, my friend.
Thanks. See you, Steve.
The great Rob King. Great to have him on the show today. All right, we'll wrap it up in a moment on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Ratings for the Thursday Canada-U.S. Four Nations Championship game. They averaged 9.3 million viewers in the United States. Another 7 million across Canada. So better than 16 million between the United States and Canada watched that game on Thursday night, which just about matches Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final last year between Edmonton and Florida. Tremendous. And then on the sad note, also in hockey, Al Trautwig, who is, to me, one of the truly outstanding broadcasters. Knicks, Rangers, USA Network. Thought Al Trautwig was outstanding. Passed away at the age of 68. And
I saw that. I thought he was older.
Yeah. No, so did I. Wow. Sorry to hear that. And I thought Al Trautwig was outstanding, and he did a lot of the Olympic work. He was great on all that Olympic stuff. Great, always had the right tone, tenor. And how about this Big East ACC merger possibility? How about that one?
I missed that.
Yeah, no, they're talking about maybe merging because right now the Big East is struggling. Okay? Let's be honest. The Big East is struggling right now. And I don't mean on the court, because obviously UConn's the two-time national champion. St. John's is having a phenomenal year. But they're not gaining any TV traction. All right? And they're talking about possibly merging. And here's the other one. I got to bring this one up. We all know that ESPN and Major League Baseball will split after this season. I'm going to be very interested to see is how many baseball highlights will still air on SportsCenter starting next year.